Chinese Americans, Asians Americans are going through the same struggle that we are. They're losing their jobs too. They're suffering just like us. They're trying to get by just like us. They're trying to stay safe just like us. They're worried about their families just like us. They are scared just like us. And now they have even more things to be scared of because their own people, their own hometown, the people that they know are now looking at them like it's their fault. And I think we really need to unpack that and just not do that. Hey guys, welcome back for your weekly dose of Midori's World. It's your girl, Midori. Today's topic is going to be an unpopular opinion, and it's basically going to be talking about just Asian Americans and how Asian Americans are being treated in the United States due to the coronavirus, but also just people doing like insensitive and saying insensitive stuff and calling it the Chinese virus. Which it's not. Idiots. So let's get started. So currently in America and all around the world, people are calling the coronavirus the Chinese flu or the Kung flu, which is not only like extremely racist, it's also just very highly ignorant. To basically blame a whole race of people for something that was technically out of their control and at the end of the day is the fault of the government. So our President Trump, during a open conference at the White House, decided to use the most stupidest terms and call the coronavirus Kung flu. And he said that he agreed that Kung flu is the correct terminology to use since it came from China. And he also just agreed that there was nothing wrong with it and that all Asian Americans would probably agree with that terminology, and not taking into consideration how this could affect Chinese Americans, especially just Asian people in general in America. So let's dive into this serious topic, guys. So the origin of this all is basically a White House reporter, Kellyanne Conway, was talking to President Trump about an experience she had faced after she overheard a White House official basically call the coronavirus the Chinese flu or Kung flu. After hearing this racism and bigotry, she decided to reprimand the person. Congrats. Best thing that could have ever came out of the White House was her reprimanding, because literally I feel like the White House is filled with the most bigots, racist people in the world. Anyway, so after Kellyanne, reprimanded this White House representative, she then asked the President of the United States, Trump, the guy who has, fake hair, fake toupee guy, she decided to ask Trump if that was okay to basically say, and like why is this going on? And he basically said, well, it came from China, and that he saw nothing wrong with it calling it the Kung flu. Not taking into thought of how, after making that statement, how it was going to affect a ton of people's lives. Now, currently in New York City, there have been more and more cases around the boroughs of Chinese Americans getting, racist comments said at them, slurs, but also getting attacked on trains or even stabbed due to the outbreak and the fear and the misunderstanding that people have of where it came from. Just shitty racist asshole people just doing shitty racist asshole things to just regular everyday people who literally are just trying to live their life. Just because Chinese people may have been born in China, or they could have been born in the States if they're Chinese American, which I don't think a lot of people who are doing these crimes are thinking about, that if you're attacking someone in America, that they might be Chinese American. But also that just because someone looks like, Chinese doesn't mean that they're actually Chinese. And it's racist that people think that Chinese looks a specific way, because a race doesn't look a specific way. So kudos for being racist for the day. Anyway, so after President Trump made these statements, a lot of more and more, just like hate crimes came out. And I think it's something that we really have to talk about. I think it's something that's really, really important to say. First of all, if you see a Chinese person or an Asian person walking down the street, you can't just assume that they're Chinese. You can't assume that they've lived in China. You can't even assume that they even speak, Chinese. And I think it's really racist that people think that way. I think it's really racist that people are looking for Chinese people to blame, or just Asian people to blame due to, a continent. It's not the Chinese people's fault to even begin with. It's the Chinese government fault. It's the Chinese government fault for how they basically handled the situation. It's the Chinese government fault for how they basically brought it out to the people. I don't know if you guys remember, but when the outbreak started happening and it started to get out, the Chinese government was saying that it wasn't that big, it wasn't that bad, basically in the fears that it might affect their stock trades and their deals all around, the other continents, especially USA. Instead of actually caring about the people that were getting infected, especially not caring about the people that were, getting sick or dying, and they were just trying to keep it as hush-hush as they could, instead of doing something about it. Because even when you look back on that, I don't know if you guys remember, but the whole WeChat thing, like Weibo, I believe they call it. Even when you look back on Weibo, it was so bad that people were getting banned, and people couldn't talk about it, and if they did talk about it, they would get in trouble. So it's not really Chinese people's fault that the government decided to keep it under wraps instead of dealing with the problem themselves. If anything, we need to think about and talk about the Chinese government and how they handled it, and instead of blaming their people. Chinese people should not be at fault for the fact that the Chinese government did not handle it in an effective way. If you really want to talk or criticize someone, you could criticize their president. You could criticize him by calling him Pooh Bear. You can do that. But the people have suffered enough. The people in China have suffered enough. They've been through enough. They've lost so much. They were under lockdown. During the beginning, before it was even on lockdown, the Chinese government was trying so hard to keep everything under wraps, was trying so hard to make it look like they had everything under control, that people were sincerely losing their lives. And an example of that is the doctor who actually first found out about coronavirus. Let's talk about the Chinese whistleblower Li Wei-Lang. And if I'm saying this wrong, I'm so sorry, and you could definitely post down below, because this guy deserves so much. He needs a statue somewhere. He deserves so much. And sadly, he has passed away, but his story needs to truly be told. So Li was a 34-year-old. Li Wei-Lang was a 34-year-old doctor from Wuhan, China, who had saw several cases that had the similarity of the big outbreak in the past, SARS, but he knew that it wasn't something that was exactly SARS, but he basically knew that it was something that resembled it. Knowing this, he basically had sent out a message through WeChat, basically warning all other doctors that he had knew that there was an outbreak that was coming that resembled SARS, and that doctors need to be aware, informed, and be careful, because once it gets bigger, they need to be prepared. And after Lee made a group chat where he told all the doctors about his findings and how they should start wearing protective masks and protective clothing to protect themselves from this up-and-coming outbreak, he was actually summoned by the Security Bureau in China. And after his summoning, which happened after 4 days, guys, 4 days, he put it out, and after 4 days, the Security Bureau notified him. They told him to come in, and when he came in, they basically told him that he had to write a letter apologizing and basically saying that his findings were not accurate, which is pretty fucked up if you think. This average guy, this Chinese man, was trying to help his people and also help his medical field to basically protect themselves and inform them about what was happening and help the people that will probably be coming in, because then they'd know, okay, so this is what Lee was talking about. He was talking about, you know, these people coming in. This does seem similar to SARS. Thank God we have our protective wear on, and thankfully we can now help and probably help get better at this. Just think, this Chinese man went out of his way to tell his fellow doctors that there was this big thing coming around and that they should be safe, they should be protected, they should be careful. But also what the disease or virus sort of replicated, like it looked like to them, that was similar to them, which would be SARS. And I think it's so sad that after he was just warning people to be careful, that he got called to the Security Bureau department in the government to basically say all his findings were a lie. And this man was trying his best to stop the outbreak. This guy was trying his best to make sure that it didn't come out. However, the government was trying to push it all down, probably due to greed, and tell him that he has to write a letter to say that his findings were a lie. And look at where we are now. Shortly after that, he was being investigated by the police for spreading rumors. Yes, in China, you can be investigated by the police for spreading rumors, even though they weren't rumors, because it was pretty true. Look at us where we are now. And I think that's also really fucked up that the government did that to him, to have him be investigated for spreading rumors when he wasn't. And shortly after that, he contracted coronavirus, and he did not survive it. This man died trying to save everyone's life. This Chinese man died, guys, trying to save you, me, and his people. And who stopped him? Who told him to put out something in the press saying that he was lying and creating rumors? The Chinese government. No one else, guys. And I think before you blame Chinese people and blah, 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 you need to really think about what you're doing and saying. And calling it the Kung Flu is so berating, especially when there was a guy on the front lines who was Chinese, who's trying his best to make sure that it didn't pass over, that it didn't spread. It's the Chinese government's fault, and I think we need to really own that. The Chinese government was even trying to make sure that, you know, people weren't able to broadcast, people weren't able to talk about it on Weibo, so much more. And you're here blaming a whole race of people that were just trying to express, that were so afraid, they were so scared, we went through so much stuff for more than like 4 months or more. You want to blame them? I think that's ridiculous. Let's be real about this. Let's be logical. The Chinese people had nothing to do about the spread. It was the Chinese government. It was the Chinese government's greed why they didn't want it to be released to the press and other countries that it might affect. It was Chinese government's fault that it was handled wrong. They should have let Lee basically speak his truth, or ask him where he was getting this information from and look more into it, instead of saying that he was lying, instead of him making him come out with a statement, or then wanting him to come out with a statement saying that he was lying. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? It's so disgusting that as soon as something is said, before it's even thought upon, before even internalizing it, you just blame someone because someone else says it. Like, what type of bullshit is that? Like, you need to use your noggin. You need to use your noggin and stop doing racist stuff. You need to use your noggin and not be problematic. You need to use your noggin and not be an ass to people. Come on. Asian Americans have nothing to do with this crime, and it's also really fucked up that you think they do. It's fucked up that you think that Chinese Americans have something to do with this crime. No one has nothing to do with this crime except for the Chinese government. The Chinese government could have done better, they should have done better, and they didn't. And it's no one else's fault but theirs. And that is something that needs to be said. I feel like it breaks my heart that, you know, there are so many articles coming out that Chinese Americans and Asian Americans in general are getting beat up because they look Chinese. Like, how do you look Chinese? Like, how do you look Chinese? Like, dude, like, you beat someone because they look Chinese? Like, what kind of dumb shit is that? And most of the time you're beating up Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans, I have a friend who is Chinese and has never been to China, doesn't even know a lick of Chinese. And it's like, just because someone looks and might be Chinese doesn't mean they've been to China, doesn't mean they know anything about their culture. Shit, the fuck? Like, it doesn't make sense. It just simply doesn't make sense. Like let's stop doing this shit. Let's use our head, use our noggins, and also help me don't do something racist or stupid. Chinese Americans, Asians Americans are going through the same struggle that we are. They're losing their jobs too. They're suffering just like us. They're trying to get by just like us. They're trying to stay safe just like us. They're worried about their families just like us. They are scared just like us. And now they have even more things to be scared of because their own people, their own hometown, the people that they know are now looking at them like it's their fault. And I think we really need to unpack that and just not do that. Not make their own place a place where they thought was their own, their war zone. Let's not. And I think that if you see a Chinese American, or just an Asian American, because honestly, you guys will never be able to tell. Like, come on, man. It's literally like asking a black person, are you Caribbean? Like, would you know? How would you know if I'm Caribbean or not? Not all black people come from the Caribbean, so like, you just will never know. You will never really know what the fuck a person is until they tell you. And you can't look at an Asian person and say, oh, they're from China. It's racist, it's problematic, and it's probably not fucking true. So just don't do it, guys. Just don't do it. If you see an Asian American wearing a mask, they're just like a normal fucking person. They're just wearing a fucking mask. Just like you're probably wearing a fucking mask. So instead of beating them up, instead of doing dangerous shit, why don't you just let them live their life? Let them live their life. They just want you to live their life. Let them live their life. They're going through hard times, and they're not bothering you. They're not bothering you. They're doing nothing to you. So just leave them alone. Let them be. Let them go on their way. Let them have as best of a time as they can in this quarantine. And let's leave it at that. And the final thing I have to say is that fear is created from misunderstanding. And the misunderstanding is that Chinese people are at fault for this disease. and it's not their fault.